Extending yourself in compassion to another human being changes the nature of your relationship. The acknowledgement of one human being to another is what bonds, strengthens, and expands the human connection. This quote from Oprah Winfrey starts us off today as we explore some of the challenges of experiencing compassion and taking action towards others, and how we can dig a little deep into our empathetic reserves to help one another. I'm Dr. Amy Backos, and I'm so glad you're here at the Modern Creative Woman podcast. We're talking today about empathy and compassion, and I'll share some of the distinctions between these emotions. And psychology has a lot to say about these particular emotions and experiences which drive us to connect with other people. It's often considered a pro-social emotion. In other words, it helps us survive to have empathy and compassion for one another. Undoubtedly, you've witnessed a friend experiencing pain. Maybe they tripped going up the stairs, stubbed their toe, lost a loved one, sad about something that happened or didn't happen. And our natural reaction is to have some kind of feeling in response to this, where we can kind of tap into what they're feeling, and then we want to support them. This example is inclusive of both empathy and compassion. Most of the time we use these words interchangeably, and most of the time there's nothing wrong with this. However, words matter, and there's a reason that we want to have some distinction. Empathy is what happens when you're feeling someone else's emotions as if they were your own. You kind of turn the camera inward and have a sense of what they're going through. You call it up into your own body. In fact, it's human instinct to do that. There's quite a bit of research revealing that when you witness someone else in pain, the particular region of your brain that lights up is called the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex. Those become active in your brain. And guess what? That's the same spot in your brain that is active if you're experiencing pain. Think of it as resonance, where you're vibing with someone's emotion. It's very much natural, automatic. And these kinds of emotions don't just relate to when you're feeling something uncomfortable, like your friend's grief. It also works with joy, excitement. When someone's experiencing a powerful, positive emotion that we like to feel, we will also have that same region in our brain light up. Essentially, empathy has 3 different layers. One is the emotional empathy that I just described. It lets you share that feeling in your body. You recognize that they're in pain, or they feel embarrassed or in grief, and your brain reflects that same feeling. You share that feeling in your body. A feeling is considered a vibration in your body. There's also cognitive empathy, and that's what really helps you understand what someone else feels. They're explaining to you what happened, and you can start to get a sense of what's happening through their language and through your own cognitive processes. You didn't maybe witness them trip and fall, but they're telling you a story about it. So you can start to experience that empathy because your brain is working. And finally, there's compassion, or you can think of it as compassionate empathy. And that's the urge to do something about it. You want to comfort your friend, give them a hug, or if they got the promotion, you want to cheer for them and be happy for them. And each of these, while they overlap, are lighting up different parts of your brain. Empathy is really good for us, whether we're giving it or we are receiving it. Empathy, however, gets tossed around a little too liberally. And I wanted to say what it's not. It's a type of emotional intelligence, but it's not a superpower. We all have it. So empathy isn't pulling people out of their pain. It doesn't absorb their pain. It's not a performance. No one has to see it for you to know that you're feeling empathy. It's certainly not a weakness. It doesn't make you fragile to have empathy. It's similar to sympathy, but there's an urge to do something when you have compassion. If we shift into compassion, it lets you move from empathy into something else. So empathy is feeling someone else's pain or joy, and compassion is moving you to respond to it. It's really the natural next step when we understand that someone is struggling. It's essentially moving from your isolated private experience of whatever that emotion is into a connection with another person. You want to understand and you want to help. This has been a topic of conversation for a very long time. In Buddhism, it's the willingness to stay open in the presence of pain. In psychology, it's seen as a balance between sensitivity and strength. The parts of your brain that are feeling love are the same parts that are lighting up when you're engaging in compassion. And compassion has nothing to do with pity. It's not about asking you to burn out, where you're overly involved in someone else's problems or you're people-pleasing. Compassion is not asking you to exhaust yourself. And again, it's not trying to fix someone. Compassion has nothing to do with bypassing difficult emotions. It's the urge to comfort. And compassion is not transactional. If someone's thinking they will engage in attention to someone who's struggling with the thought in the back of their mind that they will get something in return, that's simply not compassion. The nice thing about compassion is the more you train it, the more it can become very loving and strong. Empathy focuses on feeling the emotion with someone. You're right there with them. You're feeling it too. You might have the action of thinking about and understanding what they're going through. And it's really an inward experience. When you're feeling empathy, it's focused on you and your feelings. It's nothing to do with them yet. It can build closeness when you have empathy with other people, except it can be draining over time. To sit with someone in grief and not have the urge towards compassion, or they're unable to receive compassion, it can feel very tiring to call up these emotions in ourselves over and over and over again. Compassion, coming from empathy, is wanting to ease someone's pain. It's not trying to fix them, but it's taking action steps to support or help. So instead of reflecting on your own emotion, it's turning outward and reaching to help someone. It's building strength and warmth, and it's about lasting care. It deepens a relationship, and it's not depleting. When I work with students training to become therapists and art therapists, I talk about using empathy as a source of information, reflecting on one's own emotions. When it comes up that we feel our client's pain, it's a piece of information, and then we want to shift into compassion. We can't linger in that empathy for days and days, or we become vicariously traumatized. The idea is to experience that emotion internally and then move outward to offer support. I did some searching on the Mendeley Worldwide Research Database, and there's been 10,000 research studies on empathy just in the last year and a half. This is a highly researched subject. I mentioned earlier that emotion of empathy is a pro-social behavior. And the capacity for empathy really does require this interplay of our neural networks. And it's allowing us to perceive the emotions of others, resonate with them, cognitively take it in, understand the perspective of the other person, distinguish between our own and other emotions. That's a lot of things happening all at once in that moment of empathy. There may be times when we're struggling with some kind of emotional empathy. We aren't connecting to what's happening, and that's when we can shift to the cognitive empathy and use our brain to figure out what another person is feeling. One article I found titled "The Science of Empathy" expresses that self and other empathy leads to a replenishment and a renewal of a vital human capacity. And if we are to move in the direction of a more empathetic society and a more compassionate world, it is clear that working to enhance our natural capacities to empathize is critical, and it's essential for strengthening individual, community, national, and international bonds. This is an article from the Journal of Patient Experience by H. Reese. And they're talking about, or rather, they're writing about what it feels like to be a client or a patient, on the receiving end when you're asking for help from some kind of professional. And it's very clear to the researchers that this is not simply about a single interaction with another person. It has huge implications for us at our local and national and global community. I started to wonder why it seems like people are struggling with empathy and compassion right now. And I found an article called "Caring is Costly," and that it explores this idea of why people are avoiding the cognitive work of compassion. This is a 2022 article from the Journal of Experimental Psychology. They are speculating if compassion is such a warm and positive experience, then people seem to be having the urge or the motivation to seek out compassion when given the opportunity. They wondered whether people would spontaneously choose to feel compassion, and if these kinds of choices are associated with perceiving compassion as what they call cognitively costly. In other words, it takes a lot of mental labor. And they reviewed all kinds of findings to discover that many people opt out and they want to avoid compassion even when given the opportunity, and that many people reported compassion to be more cognitively taxing than just empathy, and compassion is more cognitively taxing than just objective detachment. So when they thought that compassion would be fatiguing in their brain, they weren't engaging in it. They also discovered two really important boundary conditions. First of all, people were less likely to avoid compassion for people that were close to them, and the choice difference was associated with viewing compassion for people close to them as less cognitively costly. What they mean is that we're more likely to engage in compassionate behavior towards people that we're close with, our friends, our family, and we generally see it as worth the price. We don't mind that it takes some cognitive labor to reach out and help a friend. They also found that even when there was a broad context and sort of intensive pleas for help, participants often preferred to escape the feeling of compassion. They were wondering if compassion is indeed a pro-social action. And what they discovered is that people consider how costly it might be for them to engage in compassionate behavior before they reach out and do something. If you've ever witnessed an accident or something happening and you pulled over your car to see if you could help, or you ask someone if they need anything, that takes a bit of emotional toll. It might take time. And what we're finding is that we're evaluating, do I want to do this? Do I want to engage in compassionate behavior? Essentially, the research is pointing us in the direction of needing compassion, more compassion. It's an investment for the world when we engage in compassionate actions. And now we are starting to understand why we might be hesitant to engage in compassionate behavior. It's a self-focused decision. Oh, that's going to take too much work. I would pose the question of what's the cost of avoiding compassionate behavior? And I'm sure we can think of all kinds of examples where we've seen people practice a lack of compassion or emotional disengagement. I think it's something we need to seriously consider, how we can engage in more compassionate behavior. I want to invite you on a little 5-day challenge, and to do something with compassion every single day. It can be people close to you, and I want to encourage you to try doing it with people that you don't know. I went on a walk yesterday and passed by a parent who had a young child who was upset and struggling. And I smiled and nodded, and we had a few words, and I was definitely feeling empathy and compassion for this parent. Later on down the walk, I saw an elderly person who stopped to sit down on the stoop at a store, and I checked in to make sure they were okay, because it's not the most comfortable place to sit. And they just needed a few minutes, they said, to catch their breath. Perhaps as a therapist, I'm more interested in engaging in compassionate acts, but I don't think that's true. I think that it feels good to check in with others, and it feels good to them and us. We're not just doing it for them. To engage in behavior that shows our compassion and empathy is a value-based behavior. It moves us towards feeling better. Dismissing someone as not worthy of your compassion gets a lot of people into trouble. Kristen Neff is a strong researcher with a lot to say about self-compassion. She says compassion is by definition relational. Compassion literally means to suffer with, which implies a basic mutuality in the experience of suffering. The emotion of compassion springs from the recognition that the human experience is imperfect. So knowing that our personal experience is imperfect, and so is everyone else's. Let me know what this 5-day challenge looks like for you. Engaging in compassion very consciously towards people you know and people you don't know has an impact on your brain in the good ways, in the ways that you want it to be impacted. And experiment and see where you can bring more compassion into your life. I would love to hear how this goes. You can message me in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Amy Bacos. And I would be delighted to know how we can make the world a more compassionate place. wonderful rest of your week. Now that you know about how to use your creativity, what will you create? Want more? Subscribe to the Modern Creative Woman digital magazine. It's absolutely free and it comes out once a month. And I know you can get a lot out of the podcast and the digital magazine. Yet when you're ready to take it to the next level, I want you to know you have options inside the membership. And if you're interested in a private consultation, please feel free to book a call with me. Even if you just have some questions, go ahead and book a call. My contact is in the show notes, and you can always message me on Instagram. Do come find me and the Modern Creative Woman on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Dr. Amy Bacos. If you like what you're hearing on the Modern Creative Woman podcast, I want to give you the scoop on how you can support the podcast. You can be an ambassador and share the podcast link with 3 of your friends. You can be a community supporter by leaving a 5-star review if you think it's worth the 5 stars. And you can become a gold star supporter for as little as $3 a month. All those links are in the show notes. Remember to grab your free copy of the 21-Day Gratitude Challenge. The link is in the show notes, and you can find it at moderncreativewoman.com. Have a wonderful week, and I cannot wait to talk with you in the next episode.